the screen in just a second. There's going to be a series of images up here, and we all get to see what we can see. How about we call it that? Some people are going to see some different things. Some people are going to see things at different times. So feel free to nudge your neighbor and ask them what they see, or just keep it to yourself, or even shout out whatever you see, and we'll see who gets what. So let's try the first one, and just what do we see? See a boat? Alright, now we see a crocodile or alligator. I'm not sure what the difference is, but... Okay, that's good. Alright, so we got the boat. Alright, next one. Let's see. Alright, what do we see? Who sees the people? And what else? Chess pieces, pillar, something like that? It's the Roman Forum. Okay, next one. I heard both. I heard the lady and the man. You got it? Oh, okay, next one. What do you see? I see binoculars, car. Alright, we see the car at the top and the first. Yep, okay, we got it. And next one. What did you see first? Did you see the pillar first? The people? Yeah, yeah. Okay, and I think we have one more? Nope, that's it. Okay, so we saw a lot of different things. It's amazing that we see different things. You know, we're looking at the same thing, but we all see different things first. Ancient philosophers had developed all sorts of theories on how we see, how our eyes actually work. Because nobody knew. I mean, nobody had dissected eyes. There was no anatomy of the eye at that point. So people were trying to come up with theories for how we see. And this was in the age of Plato and Aristotle and Ptolemy and all these kind of ancient Greek 4th, 5th, 6th century BC philosophers, which is about the same time period that a lot of the Old Testament was written down. So this is all sort of the same world that's thinking about the eyes and how we see and how this all works. So a lot of these theories of how we see started in that time, and we can thank a philosopher named Empedocles because he caused quite a stir in this whole world of how we see. He came up with this theory that our eyes see by beaming things out from our eyes. His theory was that our eyes are like lanterns that are like on fire. They have lively fire in them, and they send beams of something out, and when those beams grab an object, then we see. It's like, Superman's X-ray vision almost, or Jack in The Incredibles, and stuff comes out your eye. But he thought this is how we see. His theory was called extramission. That things are coming out of our eyes in order for us to see. Well, Plato, super famous Plato, he liked this idea, and so he developed it a bit, and he got a larger following for the extramission idea of seeing. Well, later on, Aristotle looked at this, and he thought, that's ridiculous. There is no way that things come out of our eyes to be able to see. I mean, after all, if things were coming out of our eyes to see, we could see at night perfectly clearly. But we can't. So he decided, let's go the other way. So he came up with the opposite idea, which is called intromission, that objects out there, those things emanate beams that then attach to our eyes. And we see when objects around us send beams toward us, and we're able to see because our eyes grab onto those beams that come from the objects. So there was all this camp of, is it this or is it this? Do our eyes send beams or receive beams? They were so concerned about how do we actually see and how does this make sense? Well, God, Jesus, and the Bible talk a lot about seeing and how the eyes work, but for a little bit different reason. They want to certainly figure out how our eyes work, but for the purpose of our eyes seeing, even to the point of seeing clearly. I mean, Jesus is the one who made this phrase so famous that blessed are you when you have eyes that see. Jesus wants us to be able to see, and not just see objects mechanically, not just see them physically, but to be able to see more. See beyond, see faith, see truth, see God, see God's plans for us, see the way that the world works, and see beyond just the surface of things, but understand, listen, pay attention so that we know and understand what we're seeing. The good thing is these things are all over the Bible. The Bible talks about this so many times, a bunch of times in the Bible. The Bible talks about eyes and seeing and clarity all together. Old Testament, New Testament, lots of different people said it. It's all over the place. And this variety really helps us grab onto and understand more of what does the Bible mean? What did God mean when God wants us to have eyes that see? How does this even make sense, and what's it all about? So as we jump into trying to get a handle on what does it mean to have eyes that see, we're going to look at two passages today, both Old Testament, to help just grab onto what does it mean to have eyes that see. We're going to start with the Psalm, as the Psalm that was just read, and look for, as we look at it again, look for what it says about eyes that see and what God wants from that. So, here goes. Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to your name goes all the glory, for your unfailing love and faithfulness. Why let the nations say, where is their God? Our God is in the heavens, and he does as he wishes. Their idols are merely things of silver and gold, shaped by human hands. They have mouths but cannot speak, and eyes but cannot see. They have ears but cannot hear, and noses but cannot smell. They have hands but cannot feel, and feet but cannot walk, and throats but cannot make a sound. And those who make idols are just like them, as are all who trust in them. So this psalm is setting up kind of a compare and a contrast. It's kind of the difference between the people that follow God on the one hand and the people that follow idols or not God on the other hand. It's setting up kind of the what to do and what not to do. The how to follow God faithfully and how not to follow God faithfully. It's a good lesson in how to see or how not to see. And in this compare and contrast between these two things, there's kind of two things happening. The first thing that's happening takes up the bulk of the psalm. It's kind of the big descriptions of things that are happening. And it's all about the people that are on this side, the not following God side, but they are following something, aren't they? What are the people on the not God side? That's not you versus you. It's just that side versus. So what are the people on that side? What are they following? They're following idols. Okay, so we learn a lot about idols in the Old Testament. There's the golden calf, super famous. That Aaron fashions the golden calf and says, I don't know where it came from. It just came out of the fire. They formed this golden calf. And idols so often were these precious kinds of statues, these precious metal or fine stone-based sorts of statues that people would make. They would fashion them with their hands, they would make them, and then they would worship them as if those things had power. And they believed that these things had life. That even though they were made of metal or stone or whatever, they believed that there was something alive in them. So that's why so often they were made to be life creatures, like animals or people, because they looked like what we understand has life. And they gave them all sorts of features that alive creatures have. So what we see in this description is we see all kinds of features. What features do we see that they have? They have mouths, eyes, ears, noses, feet, hands, and throats. Okay, so they've got lots of features. All the senses are involved here. And the key issue here is whether or not these features actually work. So the criticism of the idols is that the features don't work. I mean, while it looks like they have mouths and ears and eyes and noses and feet and hands and throats, can these things actually speak and hear and see and smell and touch and walk and swallow? No, of course they can't. And that's the criticism of. They have the features, they look like they do, but the features don't work. For our purposes, they have eyes, but the eyes don't work. And God's basically saying, if you've got the features, they're there so that they can work and so that they can do what they're supposed to do. If you've got eyes, the point is that you can see. So if you have eyes and you don't see, there's something missing. So I love the second part because it kind of makes the connection and it takes a turn. The second part says, and those who make idols are just like them, as are all who trust in them. Okay, now we're talking. Now we're getting to you and me. If we have features that God has made for us, and we're not using them, or they're not doing what they're designed to do, then we're missing something. God gave us all, whether we're on we don't believe in God or do believe in God, whatever side we're on, God gave us all the same kind of eyes. Nobody has different eyes. We all have the same physical eyes. It's just whether or not do they work the way that God intends for them to work. And that has to do with who governs our eyes. You know, for the idol people, the things that they produce govern their eyes. The things that they're looking at govern their eyes. But for God, God's saying it's what you trust in that governs your eyes and makes them work. So if you want to have eyes to see, if you want your eyes to work the way God designed them to work, then it's a trust issue. And it's who you trust in that then makes your eyes work. See, I like this psalm, partly because it's direct, but I like it because it asks a big question. You know, who do we trust in that's going to make our physical attribute, our feature, work the way that God intended? Who do I trust that makes my eyes see, even see clearly the way that God wants them to see? Okay, second passage. This one's from Isaiah. And we've looked at some Isaiah passages in the last couple of weeks, but here's one more. This one has a little more context that we'll get into in a second. So Isaiah says, I will lead blind Israel down a new path, guiding them along an unfamiliar way. I will brighten the darkness before them and smooth out the road ahead of them. Yes, I will indeed do these things. I will not forsake them. Listen, you who are deaf, look and see, you blind. Who is as blind as my own people, my servant? Who is as deaf as my messenger? Who is as blind as my chosen people, the servant of the Lord? You see and recognize what is right, but refuse to act on it. You hear with your ears, but you don't really listen. Okay, who is this about? The psalm we read was just about those bad pagans, those idol people, versus those people who trusted in God and understood God and followed God. But who's this one about? This is about the people who follow God. This is about the people who say, I trust in God. We trust in God. We're in this. We're in a relationship with God. But what does God call them? Yeah, he calls them blind. See, this is strange, because I thought, looking at the psalm at least, that the blind sort of can't see metaphor was for the idol worshippers, we don't follow God, but the sight, see, eyes that work, that's for the people that do follow God. As if we trust in God, our eyes work. We don't trust in God, our eyes don't work. But this one's about the people of God, the people who said we do trust in God, and do their eyes work? No. What's wrong? Why don't their eyes work? So we've looked at Isaiah before, and Isaiah, was written in a time when all of these people it was a bad situation. They had been displaced from their land. They were sort of the people of God in the promised land. They were in the fold. They were in the spot. They were in the place where God designed and wanted them to be. They were right where they needed to be for everything to work right. And then they got displaced. They got conquered. They got exiled. They got split up. They weren't home anymore. They weren't able to worship God like before. Everything was a mess. And at the time when Isaiah wrote this, it was probably 10 or so or even more years into that crisis and problem. So they've been living this for quite a while. They had these sorts of problems. And I read that description, I feel bad for them. Like, they're missing what God designed for them. They're just missing it all. But why did it happen? How did they get there? What was it that caused all of this problem? They couldn't see. They weren't using their eyes. I mean, they had been the people of God, but they had refused to believe the things that God had designed for them to see. They had been refusing to live the way that God had designed for them to live. So God decided, finally, that God would discipline them and try to bring them back and help them to see again. So that's what the whole problem in exile is all about. God trying to help them see again. And God is describing to them what's going to happen because God wants them yet again to be able to see. I mean, isn't it crazy that he talks about them, the people of God, the people who follow God, as blind and deaf? Even the people who are his closest servants, the people who are closest to him, in a relationship with him, they're blind and deaf. Can it be that even if we follow God, even if we're on sort of the God side, that we can become blind? We can become like God is describing here. He says at the end, you see and recognize what is right, but refuse to act on it. You hear with your ears, but you don't really listen. It is possible for us to see but not see. To understand but not do it. I mean, we know how this works. I know it's not right to say those words that I really want to say to that person because it would so get them back. I know it's not smart, but I'm going to say it anyway. Or I know this is not the smartest thing to put in my body, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's here. Or I know that's not the best group to hang out with, but you know what? They're making me feel good right now, and they're encouraging me, so I'm going to hang out with them. I mean, we could go on and on. We know so often what is right and wrong, but we so often, all of us, refuse to do it. We don't always have the eyes to see and connect it the way that God wants us to. And saying that we follow God is no guarantee that we will live the way that God wants us to, be on the path that God wants us to be on, make the wise choices that God wants us to make. But that's not all. It's not all you and me. We have a role for sure, but there's more to it, thankfully, as Isaiah says. He says, I will lead blind Israel down a new path, guiding them along an unfamiliar way. I will brighten the darkness before them and smooth out the road ahead of them. Who's the I? God. God wants us to see clearly. Even if we've refused, God still wants us to see clearly. God wants to straighten out the rough path so that we can see clearly. God wants to be able to make the darkness bright so we can see clearly. God wants us to see an unfamiliar path and go down it because God wants us to see clearly. God made our eyes, and God makes it possible for our eyes to work the way that God wants them to work. To understand it, to live faithfully, and to understand the plans of God. And it takes this mysterious partnership between us and our intentionality and God making it possible for us to see. We use all of our attributes and every power and ability we have, and God also makes it possible for us to be able to see. Why would we ever pray? Why would we ever ask God for understanding, or ask God to make a decision, or ever ask God for help if it wasn't partly God's role in being able to help us see? It's not all you and me. It's partly you and me, and then there's this mysterious interplay with God. It takes it all for us to be able to see. I need eyes to see. We all need eyes that see. To be able to see the world around us and to be able to say, oh, okay, now maybe I understand why the world is acting the way the world is acting. Or I need eyes to be able to see, why are the people around me doing what they're doing? You know, it's taking us above and beyond the situations that we're in to be able to see things with the eyes that God can give us. I want us to have eyes that see, eyes that understand, eyes that discern, eyes that give us clarity about the people, about the things we deal with, about the world around us, so that we can live the life that God designed for us to live. Let's pray for that.